Jim and Will. What have they been watching lately? They're husky, hairy, huggable homos. Movie Bears Podcast.
Hello all and welcome to the Movie Bears Podcast. I'm Brad Harris and along with my fellow husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends, we review films either current or classic on this show. In case you're new and don't know what the hell we do, there you go. We are coming at you this week after taking an extended holiday break. Thanks for being patient with us while we were doing the family thing and the travel thing and all those holiday things. But we are back in the saddle with not one, not two, but three movies to talk about with you folks this week. That's right. Three movies. We got a lot to discuss. We're excited to jump into those conversations. But before we can do that, let me introduce those co-hosts that I mentioned. Jim Pugliafico is with us in the virtual studio. Hey, sweetheart, how's it going?
Hey, it's going. One thing's for sure. I know it's been a crazy start to the year, and I'm looking forward to getting back into some movies and starting my 2023 movie list. And it's off to a start already.
Indeed, movies are kind of our happy place on this show. So getting back into that groove is definitely a good thing. I'm glad to hear that you're excited for that, sweetheart.
Mm-hmm.
Will Lindis is also with us. We couldn't do this show without Will, of course. Hey, friend, how are you?
Hey, doing great. And Jim, you're right. Like, it's such a weird place to be this like first part of the year because I feel like I'm still watching 2022 movies, but I'm also now starting 2023 movies, and I'm figuring out if a movie that I just watched today is on my best of last year list or on my worst of next year list, or how all of that works. January is just absolutely a crapshoot, but the great thing about it is so many movies, both prestige and less so, get dumped around this time of year that there's no shortage of things to watch.
Yeah. This is the fall through the cracks time of the year, right? Where movies are either like all over the place being talked about, Oscar consideration, or they're just like, why is this movie not talked about? Yeah. Sometimes you find out why they're not talked about.
Oh, yeah.
That is very, very true. Well, we have three movies that we're going to be digging into this episode. M3GAN, the new thriller / dark comedy from James Wan and his team. We're going to be talking about Puss in Boots: The Last Wish for any fans of the Shrek franchise. That character kind of spun off from there. And then we'll be discussing I Want to Dance with Somebody, the biopic all about the life and times of Whitney Houston. Fellas, are you ready to jump into our first conversation?
Yeah,
let's do it.
All right.
Three ready to go.
I feel like I'm a little rusty after a couple weeks of being away, but I'm slowly getting back into the groove. I'm sure it will feel more familiar as we go. Oh my gosh, you guys! Hammy is in the chat with us. He says, "What's up?" Taking us back to those early 2000s. Was it Budweiser commercials?
What up?
Oh my gosh, I'm having PTSD. Anyway. Hey, Hammy, good to see you. Welcome.
Now, is Hammy part of the crew on the cinematics or
yes, he is.
podcast? Because I got a quick story. Can I tell a quick story before?
Sure, of course.
I love a quick story. Yeah.
I was driving back from a trip over the last couple weeks from Phoenix to. I took a red eye back from Boston to Phoenix, and so I landed in Phoenix at like midnight after an all night flying and not sleeping great on the plane, and I had to drive from Phoenix back to Tucson, which is a 2-hour drive. So I did started listening to the cinematics, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So they were my companions for keeping me awake on the ride home.
Good. So
Yeah.
yeah, Anderson and Greg, and of course Bruce and
Yep.
Hammy, Eric.
Bruce. Yep.
Great group. So yeah, glad you got
Yeah.
to dive into that one.
It's good to hear those
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, they've got a great show for sure. In fact, you can hear Hammy himself on the show from an episode we did just before Christmas when we celebrated our 10th anniversary.
Oh yeah.
So feel free to go back and check that out for anyone who maybe wants to hear what Hammy sounds like and hear a little bit about their show. But fellas, we got so much to
Okay.
talk about. Let's effing do this. And we're going to start with our discussion of M3GAN. Just give you a heads up, we are going to do a brief segment on this where we kind of give our initial thoughts, and then we're going to go into spoilers. So if you haven't seen M3GAN yet and you're kind of like, I'm not sure, I want to hear some opinions, if you're not, we'll do it spoiler free for a little while. We'll give you fair warning before we take things to that spoiler territory. So all of that said, here we go, our discussion of M3GAN. All right, Will, do us a favor. Give us a brief setup of this film. What is it? And let us know your initial thoughts, spoiler free, of course.
Absolutely. So M3GAN is a new Blumhouse horror. It is directed by Gerard Johnstone, who did Housebound back in 2014. Fantastic movie. Written by James Wan, the guy that did Malignant and Saw and the Conjuring
Everything.
movies. Everything. He's had his thumb on the scale of like pretty much every horror franchise for the last 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
And it tells the story of this robotics engineer at this sort of bleeding edge toy company, played by Allison Williams, who is just absolutely fantastic. You may remember her as Rose from Get Out. She has recently adopted a niece, and in the process of trying to deal with like, hey, I'm now caring for this child that I wasn't expecting to nor prepared to care for, because that's just not the type of person she was. She's also working on this lifelike cybernetic doll called M3GAN that she uses her new niece to sort of befriend, and M3GAN ends up becoming a murderous robot killer doll, as one
No
does.
way.
No way. Yeah, this is a very, very, very all right movie. And that's, and I say that because this movie really tries to like toe the line between two different things. Like at times, this is an absolutely buck wild movie. At times, this movie kind of blends a little bit more into like the family drama / like horror of the situation. And I feel like it needed to maybe pick one of the lanes and play a little bit more in that. I honestly, what I wanted this one to be a wilder ride than it was. And don't get me wrong, it dips into that territory, and when it does, it is a lot of fun. But I really do feel like, when you think about like Child's Play movies, or when you think about Chopping Mall, or any of the other
Annabelle.
killer dolls, or like just sort of weird premise horror movies, Annabelle, yeah, you're not really thinking about like, man, I really love those moments where they played it safe. The thing that sticks in your head is the moments where they go all out. So this is very good, very watchable. It's making a shit ton of movies, a shit ton of money. They're gonna make more movies because that's just how Blumhouse does when they make a lot of money with something. So
Yep.
M3GAN 4, M3GAN 5, all of those are gonna happen. So yeah, there's a lot worse that you could watch. I know that doesn't sound like a big ringing endorsement, but I liked it. It's just, I really wish I loved it, and it's like I could see the DNA of what could have made me love it. But how about you guys?
Yeah.
Was this one more of a click for you?
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think I enjoyed this movie. I laughed a lot. I wasn't scared in the least. Of course, it's not. So that's why I hesitate to put it in kind of the horror genre. Sure, things happen that are kind of horrific, but that doesn't necessarily, to me, put it squarely in the horror genre. This is more like a sci-fi thriller / comedy to me. Like there's definitely an element of sci-fi to this, given that they're putting AI in this lifelike doll toy thing. But yeah, I think you know, speaking to the Blumhouse formula, right? They make movies for relatively small, not micro budgets, but relatively small budgets compared to movies that don't look necessarily like small budget movies, right? And yeah, so I mean, this one, of course, made a ton of money just on the trailer alone. I think people were flocking to see this one. And unfortunately, well, I think the one knock I have on this movie is it was a little slow to start for me, to start really happening. But when it did, I think it was good. We just needed a little bit more of that. A lot of the stuff that was comedy in here, I don't know if it was intentional comedy or just we were just laughing like hell at some of the shit that some of the line deliveries and the character motivations, like with the Gemma, the surrogate mother here is about as worse equipped to be a mother as you could expect. And that alone, I suppose there are kids that have mothers that are like her, or maybe even more, probably even worse. So maybe I shouldn't laugh because that's a bad situation for a kid. But then like the attitude of Katie, the girl, by about halfway through the movie, you're kind of rooting for M3GAN at some point to kind of turn on the girl. I won't spoil anything, but yeah, I liked it. I liked it, and it was a lot of fun. We'll see what they do for sequels, because they're coming. And yeah, I'd recommend this one, whether you want to go out to movies or not. I don't think it matters. I'm sure this one's going to be streaming at some point pretty quickly.
All right. Awesome. For me, I loved this movie. I know you guys liked it, you enjoyed it, but this was a home run for the most part. I think it's held back by its PG-13 rating. I think if they had gone hard R with this, maybe will some of the stops that they pulled, you know what I mean, they could have gone farther with. But I think it did a really good job with the PG-13 rating. It's interesting. Social media lately, after this movie came out, has been all abuzz about M3GAN being a queer icon.
Yes,
which I don't understand, but okay.
Look, she's sassy. She twerks. She is caring and empathetic. She will cut a bitch. She wears posh clothes. I get it. I could see
she's
it.
got the attitude. She's
definitely got the attitude. Watching the trailer, I really rolled my eyes hard about seeing the movie, because I was like, ugh, this is either going to be really, really terrible, or like, it's going to be, kind of middling. But it ended up being something I really enjoyed quite a bit. I was surprised by how much I laughed, though. Reading social media, I just like to get a sense of like everyday people's reactions to movies. So you guys know I spend a lot of time on Reddit, and a lot of people were complaining that people were laughing at really inappropriate moments during this movie. And I'm like, guilty. I don't know if some of the laughs that it generated from us were intentional or not, but I don't think this movie takes itself too seriously. I think some people probably take it more seriously than the folks who made the movie did. So I laughed a lot. I had a lot of fun with this one, and I think that without going into spoilers, if we end up getting a M3GAN 2, a M3GAN 3, I'd probably be there for it. So, if you're looking for a fun movie to go out and see right now, especially in January, which is usually like a shitty movie dump, this could be a fun one to check out. So
I figured you would probably like this movie, even though you kind of rolled your eyes at the trailer. You are a big fan of the Child's Play series, right? The Chucky movies.
I am. That's
true.
true.
So I mean, this is kind of a a jizzed up.
Whoa! Whoa!
This is a zhuzhed up version of the Child's Play movies. And you mentioned that it could be a M3GAN 2, M3GAN 3. What are they going to do when they get to M3GAN 3? They've already got the M3GAN in already
Right.
out. They've already shot that bullet. So
There's room. They're gonna call the next one like M3GAN, like again, or something like that. So a couple of things on there. First of all, like the reason why I think this resonates so much with queer audiences is one, it's horror, and horror is a genre that queer, not to paint any group with a too broad a stroke, but there are a lot of people in the queer community who relate to horror. It's been a common flag for us to like unite around. But also this movie leans into camp. I mean,
yes.
this movie knows that it's buck wild. And I think enjoying it and laughing is not inappropriate here. The way that she walks into the room, you see in the trailer where she walks into the house and takes off her sunglasses really quick. I mean, that is a hell of amount of sass. I mean, she absolutely slays that scene, pun intended. But Brad, one good thing, they are releasing because of the success of this one, they are releasing, and I don't know the capacity or where, but they're releasing like an unrated version. So, basically like director's cut type thing, that has more of the stuff that they couldn't put in the first cut. I don't know if that's going to be in theaters or where that's going to be, but I already saw something about that today. So that's coming.
Totally there for it. Thanks for the heads up on that, Will. Well, guys, I know we have a couple other movies to talk about, but we wanted to carve out some time to make sure we were able to get into some spoilers for M3GAN. How do you feel about making that jump?
Yeah.
Sure, let's do it.
All right. Spoilers for M3GAN are incoming. If you have not yet seen M3GAN and you want to preserve your innocence, now is your time to step away for the next 9 minutes and 48 seconds and come on back for our next discussion, which is going to be Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. But spoilers are officially fair game. Where do you guys want to start?
Yeah, I think that, we can. It's always fun to talk in horror movies about like the kills and how how well they work within the confines of the film that they're in, right? Like with an over the top kind of campy film, you want creative, weird, fun kills, right? That may not work in like, I don't know, like a more grounded like Ghost Story, but that absolutely work in a film like this or Child's Play or anything like that. And yeah, I think that some of them are really fun. I think one of my favorite moments in the movie, and unfortunately, the trailer does this movie a lot of disjustice because I think that almost all of my favorite scenes in the movie also appeared in the trailer, which kind of sucks. But the basically the boss who there's a spot where she's going down the hallway and she does a little dance routine, grabs the paper cutter and then chases him to the elevator. It's such a wild scene.
Wacky.
Like I absolutely loved it. Like every moment of that scene. I wanted more of that. I wanted her like dancing and twerking all over this movie or whatever, but like that was so much fun. Were there any like moments, like I guess that's the question I have for you, were there any moments that stood out as like you just going like yes were any of those moments in this movie?
Well, they went for a mention on that infamous website doesthedogdie.com right away in this movie, unfortunately. Yes, and that was kind of shocking. The poor dog had not, just a regular dog with a bad owner, but the dog ultimately pays, the dog pays the ultimate price here for fucking around with M3GAN and Katie. So yeah, that was kind of shocking, like right off the bat. But yeah, that dance scene, like, where did that come from? Like, we got to wonder, like, where did it come from? Was she like has she danced in other scenes? I forget. Like, was there a scene where Katie taught her to dance or something? I don't know.
There was a scene where Katie and M3GAN were, like tween girls, like especially kind of in the TikTok era, but probably even before, obviously even before, listen to music and like choreograph little dances together. And so we saw one of the scenes when they were in that fake playroom at the toy
Oh yeah,
company,
yeah.
and they're sort of doing
Mhm.
like this little just like learning to dance together. So it was M3GAN just sort of doing that.
Mm-hmm. Will, to your question, I think the favorite kill of mine was when the kid at the camp who was like, "Fuck off, Holly."
Oh yeah.
When he goes after M3GAN, not so much where he was going to rape M3GAN. That was really fucking creepy.
that was uncomfortable.
Yeah, but where she's like pulling his ear and like stretching it way out, and then like the ear comes off and she like pushes him into traffic. He was a little fuckhead. I was glad to see him get his comeuppance. But what made it so good is there's just this shot of M3GAN like watching him in traffic where she like pops her head up and like she's got leaves in her hair and she looks all crazy, and I laughed so fucking hard.
That was
It
one of
was
the
amazing.
That was one of the unintentional laugh scenes, I thought, right? When she came up and she's got all the leaves in her hair.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. But I will also say, like, some of the villainous turns in here were very, very over the top. Like, not just M3GAN, but like the kid, the boy. Like he was like the asshole little kid, like turned up to 12. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and so was the boss, David, the boss of the toy
Yes.
company, or the project leader. Where from the jump, he was just a total
Project
raging
managers, am I
dick.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Fucking
We hate project
managers.
We hate
Don't they
managers.
all
project
act like
managers.
that? I think they
They're the
do.
worst.
Just to be sure, we've all been project manager.
Oh, 100%.
Yes, we have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Fucking dicks.
Yeah.
I've never, but yeah.
Yeah. What did you guys think of the scene where like Katie's all upset in her bed and she's like scared, and then M3GAN starts fucking singing Titanium?
So
Yes.
I loved it because that's another one of those moments that, one, it's buck wild, but also like it makes sense because like if you think about like the type of songs that you would like sing to like calm down
A tween.
a tween,
Yeah.
like a kid, you would do something that they like and that they listen to and that they can find strength in, and that's the thing that like this M3GAN doll knew exactly the right song to pick. It didn't necessarily pick like some old like song that some toy designer's family would be appreciative. It's something that it learned from her, and so I thought that was cool. I thought it was fun, and I thought it was weird, and that's what made it work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely a fun moment.
Where do we well, obviously at the end of the film, M3GAN is destroyed, right?
Or
Isn't she?
is she?
Or is she? Question mark.
Well, I don't
Her
know.
body is destroyed.
Yeah, there was a moment
Did
where
she get a
like
screwdriver through the brain?
she
I
got a
thought.
screwdriver through the brain, but we had this moment right after Gemma leaves the house, where the little
right.
like whatever the home
Siri
assistant,
assistant,
Echo,
whatever.
Siri, whatever,
Alexa. Yeah.
it lights up almost to say like, oh, she's still there and she's inside of that.
She
Well, and
transferred her
remember,
intelligence.
exactly. We had seen previously that M3GAN was able to like control the lights in the house. We'd seen that M3GAN was controlling the computer in the lab at work. So obviously M3GAN is not limited to just that body. And I think one of the things this movie sets up, and a lot of people are scratching their heads, they're like, this never paid off. Why did they include it? Kurt, the assistant to the boss, steals all of M3GAN's files, but then we never see what happens with those. My guess is, if I had to write the plot for the second movie, those files go to one of the competing toy companies that they alluded was making toys for cheaper than they were. They make a M3GAN 2.0, and original M3GAN takes over one of the
100%. And it would be fun if it's like a shitty knockoff M3GAN, because that's what that other company does. But the original M3GAN that now lives in the internet or whatever can get inside of the dolls and have multiple dolls. Honestly, we're kind of describing the plot of the Child's Play remake from a couple of years ago. But you know what, whatever, like, if you can remake that movie but make it like sassy, it'd work.
Indeed. Jim, would you be there for a M3GAN 2 or a M3GAN 3?
Sure. Sure, I would watch it. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as they kept the level of, I don't know. As long as they kept the level of camp. I mean, it's almost exactly the same as Child's Play, right? I don't. I saw this one as just way more. Would you say it's more campy than like the Child's Play movies, or like did it take itself a little less seriously? I do want to before go ahead and answer that, but I have one more point to make.
Real quick, I'll say yes.
I think that it is about as campy, but it's not weighed down by its own lore the same way that Child's Play is.
Yep.
Yeah, right. So it's kind of free to kind of play in its own space. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Also want to say that like Brad and I have been talking a lot about, and Brad even plugged it on the show, right? Like artificial intelligence bots online that can like take a few prompts and like, create a story. There are some that create a song, create artwork. And we were kind of discussing in the car, like, how far away do you think we are from like where human artistic expression, is kind of outpaced by either in volume or in quality by artificial intelligence? And this movie kind of, made me feel uncomfortable about that. Like, could they put something like that in like an Android form? They're already doing it, I'm sure, a little bit, but
yeah,
how far away from reality is this movie really?
It's a little scary to think about. For
Mhm.
sure. For sure. Well, we'll have to see if we get a M3GAN 2. It looks like maybe we will. I'm going to go so far as to say I hope we do. But, guys, we got other movies to talk about.
We
Get
do.
ready to wrap up and head into our next one.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sweet. All right. M3GAN, thank you for all the joy you brought to our lives inadvertently. But we're going to go ahead and switch gears a little bit and talk about Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. All right, Jim, if you don't mind, give us a very brief setup of this movie and spoiler free, of course, until we get to the spoiler
Sure.
section. What did you think?
Yeah, so this is actually the second feature film in the tales of Puss in Boots. This is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, where Puss in Boots discovers that his passion for adventure has taken its toll over the last 11 years, I guess, because it's been 11 years since we got the first Puss in Boots movie. He has burned through 8 of his 9 lives, and he's now down to his last life. Puss sets out on an epic journey to find the mythical last wish and restore his 9 lives, reset back to all his lives left. Yeah. So, in this film, we've got Puss. He discovers that he's down to his last life, and a lot of his bravado and the piss and vinegar that he's got kind of leaves him, right, for a good chunk of this movie. And then he goes on this adventure to kind of get his 9 lives, all of his 9 lives back. This movie is directed by Joel Crawford. It stars again Antonio Banderas, Selma Hayek. It's got some really great talent in this movie. Florence Pugh is in this. Olivia Colman, Ray Winstone. This movie's peppered with some great talent. As far as the movie itself goes, I think, I like this movie ultimately. I wasn't sure about a quarter to a third of the way in. I wasn't liking the vibe with Puss having lost his just the swagger, I guess, that he had in all of the first movie. To me, that was the kind of the thing that I really loved about the character. The swagger and kind of the false bravado that always got him in trouble, or where he overstepped. And that was really taken back a couple notches in the first part of this movie, which I didn't really care so much about. But then the movie got going again and felt a lot more like the continuation of the first movie, which I did like. So ultimately, I like this movie. I think this is a fine movie for what it is. you kind of know exactly what you're getting with these. Really good animation. There's some interesting animation in here. Probably a lot of it, obviously a lot of it computer generated, but there's some different styles that they used, especially for some of the background stuff that they did. So yeah, I like this one.
All right. Awesome. Well, Jim, thanks so much for setting that up for us and letting us know your initial thoughts. Well, how about for you? Did this one hit or did this one fail?
Yeah, so one of the things that's going to be interesting about my take is I never saw the 2011 Puss in Boots. I saw the 4 Shrek movies, so I'm familiar with the character. He's in like 2 of those.
Yes,
and
he is, yeah.
And I remember like the trailers and just everything from when the other one came out. I just never got around to seeing it. So I went into this one a little bit reluctantly, honestly. It was just like, it just didn't seem like it was going to be my cup of tea. And I was very wrong. I ended up very much liking this movie, way more than I was expecting. I think this movie does what I sometimes say on here I wish more kids' movies did. And that's, I think that it presents some sort of heavy or big or complex themes, and of course a relatable way. I mean, it's still a kids movie, and there's still like fun characters and swashbuckling adventure and quick quips and colorful animation, all of those things. But this movie doesn't shy away from thinking about like, it's a story about like aging and legacy and what it means to really have family and what it means to live with regret and what it means to face those regrets. And it's a kids movie set in the Shrek universe. Every one of the voice actors, I think, really does a lot of, I mean, everyone steps up to the plate here. I mean, it was so nice hearing like Olivia Colman in this. I, of course, Antonio Banderas really, it's the role that we've seen him play before, but I think there's moments where he gets to sort of play those moments that you were talking about, where he's more shaken or where he doesn't have that bravado and that swagger. And I think Banderas, I mean, he's a great actor and he does a really good job of playing those moments off. Highlight of the movie is definitely, I think, Harvey Guillen, who, we know from a few different things, but probably most notably as Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows, which great show. The other thing I would say is the highlight is the animation. So we're seeing this sort of this shift in DreamWorks' animation with this and with the Bad Guys from last year, where they're really letting the animation be more stylistic. Definitely some of that is borrowing from Into the Spider-Verse. There's definitely some of that DNA that kind of pulls through here, but hey, they took stuff that works. We see these cool like freeze frames as things ramp up and move through. Sort of, it almost seems like some of the animation is sort of animated on the twos instead of animated as it normally would be, which is also interesting to see. Yeah, this was a fun movie to watch, a fun movie to look at, and a fun movie to think about afterwards. I guess the spoiler for this episode is that of the 3 movies that we watched this week, Puss in Boots was the one I was least interested in seeing, and it was the one that I enjoyed the most. So yeah, I recommend. I love this movie.
That's awesome, Will.
Yeah.
As the resident guy who reluctantly goes into a lot of movies that we talk about and ends up being, someone who enjoys them quite a bit, I know what that surprise is like, and so I think that's really cool that you had that experience. For me, coming into this movie, I did see the previous one, and of course the Shrek movies I've seen, and I've loved the Puss in Boots character from those films quite a lot. The Selma Hayek character was in the last Puss in Boots movie, so it was great to see her show up here again. I kind of wondered like what they were going to do sort of with those 2 characters' relationships and how the story was going to unfold. The trailer looked like the movie was going to be kind of fun, kind of more of the same. I was a little worried that it was going to kind of, I don't know, just retread too much of what's come before, because we've had Puss in 3 other movies at this point. But this movie was,
Phrasing.
Oh, okay. But
We've had Puss.
yeah, I've never had Puss. Anyway, that's another story. So, I was just worried that like this was going to be more of the same, but um, from the changes in animation, allowing them to kind of go nuts and play around with that, to some of the cool things they did with the story beats, new characters that they brought in. This honestly felt kind of like a breath of fresh air into the Shrek universe. And I'll be honest, I want more. I walked out of that movie like, can we get another Shrek movie? Can we get another Puss in Boots movie? Can we get a Gingerbread Man movie? Like, I want all the things now at this point. So, this movie really, really knocked it out of the park for me. It does a lot of fun things. It deals, like we mentioned earlier, with some heavy topics, especially for kids, but I think it handles them in a way that kids can relate to, but also the adults taking their children to see this movie can probably connect with and appreciate as well. So I'd be a little interested to hear some of the like conversations during the car ride home from this movie with kids. uh, you know um, and I think when a movie can spark conversations like that in a good way, that's definitely a testament, right, to good movie making. So really happy with this one, fellas. How do we feel about jumping into some spoilers at this point
Yeah.
for Puss in Boots?
Let's do it.
Ready.
All right.
Let's scratch it open.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump into spoilers for Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. If you have not yet seen this movie, this is your chance to step away for about the next 10 minutes or so. You're not going to want to miss our conversation around I Want to Dance with Somebody. Come on back for that. But if you are listening on digital tape delay, use the time index in the show notes to skip ahead as needed. Spoilers are officially fair game, guys. Where do you want to jump in?
I want to talk
I-
about the wolf.
Go ahead, Phil. Go ahead.
I wanna
Yeah,
talk
I
about
want to
the
talk about the
wolf.
wolf too. Yes.
Okay, we're on the
I
same
love
page.
that character, and I love the
Mm.
voicing of that character. And the whole movie, I'm trying to guess. I'm going to Brad. I'm like, come on, we gotta guess that voice because we don't look up the voices before, so gotta guess that voice. Who is it? It sounds really familiar. And ultimately, when they showed it, I'm like, okay, I guess I didn't know who it was, but he sounded familiar, and I loved the characterization
Mm.
of that character every time he was on screen. There were kind of two villains in this movie, right? There was the Jack Horner character,
Mhm.
who was kind of a villain, and then the wolf, who is also seen as a villain for most of the movie. Kind of like Wolf portrays like a Grim Reaper type character, right? He's always lurking in the background. Puss is trying to evade him at every step because he's got the one life left and he thinks this is it. This is the end. And I just love that dynamic. I love that character.
Yeah, it's there's this whenever death. That's essentially what the wolf is.
It's
Although
death,
we don't officially know that. I mean, you can figure it out, but whatever.
Right.
But we don't officially know that till the end of the movie. But whenever he appears, there's this whistle, like this whistling noise, and then we see like the fur on like Puss's like neck like stand up on end. It is incredibly unnerving. Like it is a fear. Like as an adult, like it made my skin crawl. Like it was. I mean, like I enjoyed M3GAN. It was, I think, honestly scarier than like any of the scares in M3GAN.
Yeah.
Well,
there's another thing the wolf does too, in addition to that whistle, which is bone chilling. He drags his scythes on the ground, and they make like a noise, and it reminds me a lot of Freddy Krueger, like running his nails over pipes. Yeah. And it like raised my hackles. Like I got goosebumps at that. And I'm like, this is a fucking kids movie. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Now I will, if I could take one criticism, of again, a movie I love John Mulaney. I really love John Mulaney as a comedian. I love like whenever he shows up in something. I would say Jack Horner was like the weak spot of this movie. Now, that said, I think that this movie didn't need as fleshed out a villain as some other things, because this is more a movie about the dynamic between Puss and Kitty and Perito, and Puss's relationship with Death and the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Like, there's a lot of other things going on, so we don't need to have like a ton of time spent on Jack. But I will say, whenever he was on screen, I was sort of like, all right, I want to see what's going on with Goldilocks. Get back to Puss. Get me back to some of the other characters. Like, so I don't know. Did y'all feel similarly?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like we were all kind of around the same there. Jim, maybe go a little bit deeper. Why did you feel that way?
I didn't like the character at all. I just thought, I don't know. It was just, he's just there as a big, clumsy, there aren't many big guys in movies that don't make me go, a big guy. But this was one that, like, you didn't want anything to do with this character by design. And I don't know. I just didn't. I think you had to have that character to drive the plot. I just don't think in the end it really amounted to much for me.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Will.
I was going to say, you know what I think it could have done to maybe fix the character a little bit for me without doing a radical overhaul is give us a little bit more interplay between Horner and Perito. Because, I think my favorite types of villains are the ones who are some sort of like stark difference to what the hero's goals are. And Horner and Puss are just both going for the same thing. But Horner is a person who wishes for everything, and Perito is a character who wishes for nothing. So I think because of that, I think you could have maybe played off of them a little bit more, had like some scenes where they, I don't know, even if it's just taunting or whatever, like, express their different views to each other. I don't know how to do it like without it being ham-fisted, but that could have fixed it a little bit for me. But as it is, like, I don't know that he was a good villain for Puss.
Yeah, and like, similarly, my only other criticism is I think they spent a little too long at the Mama Luna piece of this movie, just a little bit too long for me. And don't get me wrong, I love cats, and we have cats, and I love to see a lot of cats, but I just that whole section was just felt a little long for my taste. But I did like, just like the Shrek movies in here, you have these pulls from popular children's stories, right? Of course, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You have God, I just had it on the top of my head and lost it. Well, and then you have like Jack Horner, right? Instead of little Jack Horner, you have big Jack Horner. From the exactly, sticking his thumb in a plum or whatever. And then the Perito character obviously has a parallel to the donkey character, right, in Shrek. I would say kind of fills the same character role as Donkey did in Shrek for me. But all of that worked, except, like I said, the Jack Horner character wasn't the best.
Yeah. One criticism that I have is this movie, to me at least, suffers a little bit from Wizard of Oz syndrome. Like, Dorothy, you could have gone home in any time you wanted all along. Like Puss goes on this journey to get the last wish and get his lives back, only to come to the realization that, like, his life with Kitty Softpaws is all he needs. He doesn't really need this last wish. I was like, oh, we just spent this whole movie chasing, after this thing, just to like have it, go to waste, like not really be a thing. Like, it would have been a little more interesting to me, I guess, if, like, I don't know, maybe Perdito did have a wish, and like he was the one you didn't expect to get the wish in the end, and like his wish is like, what saved the day or brought everyone together. It seemed a little predictable, I guess. But I think that's a very, very minor criticism of this film. I think it was a strong story. I love that Goldilocks and the Three Bears got as fleshed out as they did. They also went on a journey, and I know several people who are adopted, and they have talked to me about some of the struggles that they go through, and how maybe they feel like they were adopted by a family and they have a family, but it's not like their family necessarily, but like later in life they come to the realization that, like, that is their family, that is their tribe, you know.
Mhm.
And I just thought it was really cool to see those themes play out in a kids movie. If you think about kids who are adopted and watching this movie, it's another one of those like heavy but good things, I think, to put in front of kids and help them maybe process some of those emotions. So it was kind of neat to see that redemptive arc for Goldilocks. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but Baby Bear had a chain with a lock around his neck. And I
What are you
kind of
thinking,
wondered,
Brad?
I kind of, you know, as someone who's, you know,
Who knows about those
maybe
things?
Okay.
knows about these things. I just found it a little interesting that like Baby Bear was maybe collared by a dom.
So do you think
That's
there's a scene where Pinocchio's like, just like, on your knees, boy, or something like that? Just walks through.
on your knees, bear.
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting, wouldn't it? I'm
Brad,
wondering why
obviously
they
he had
gave him a collar with a
Obviously, he
lock.
escaped from a captive situation for a circus show.
Okay.
That's why he had
Is
that.
that what
I
it
think
was?
Yeah.
I think what they were doing, if I can sort of, devil's advocate it, like each of the three bears had something that sort of looked like something you'd see in like a British like crime drama, a la like Train Spotting or Lock, Stock or something like that. And so just like Mama Bear's like hat and like the little chains. Like that's kind of where I saw it. Although I think I see where you're coming from too, Brad.
I just
it
thought it
too
was
fits.
an interesting visual choice. You know?
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
but sounds like we all enjoyed this movie quite a bit, which I think is great. I'm sure we're going to get another one of these movies at some point, hopefully. I don't know financially how well this film is doing. That, of course, could be a barometer of future films. But, I mean, there were... Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, it's a different world for movies like this now, I think.
Yeah.
I just, it's a little bit different environment. But, Will, I would say definitely go back and watch the original. I think you'd like that as well.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
it's really good.
Yeah.
It's really good. All right. Misogynes. We have one more film to talk about. How do you feel about getting into I Want to Dance with Somebody?
Let's
With somebody who loves me. Let's do it.
All right, awesome. So our last movie of the episode this week is Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody. And to introduce this, I'll read from the IMDb description. A joyous, emotional, heartbreaking celebration of the life and music of Whitney Houston, one of the greatest female R&B pop vocalists of all time, tracking her journey from obscurity to musical superstardom. Bit of a generic description, if you ask me, but I mean, it does the trick. This was directed by Cassie Lemons and written, interestingly, by Anthony McCartan, who wrote 2018's Bohemian Rhapsody. So if you saw both films and you're like, there's some similar DNA here, that may be why. Film stars Naomi Ackie, Stanley Tucci, and Ashton Sanders. It's a biopic, right? Like it is tracing the life and times of Whitney Houston. You see it in the trailer. This isn't a spoiler. Kind of picks up when she's very, young. She's just starting out with her singing career, and she's discovered, right? And it propels her to stardom. We get an opportunity to hear a lot of Whitney's music in this film. I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but Whitney Houston had a lot of great hits, duh. And
Yeah.
it was kind of great for me to have those songs sort of put into the context of Whitney's life, where she was at the time, kind of seeing some of her like thought process and what went into like making those songs into the hits that those became, and seeing what was happening in her life just on a personal level, while also tracking sort of that meteoric rise of her career. Without going into spoilers, I'll tell you that I got a little emotional during this movie. Jim noticed that I was crying, and Jim, I think you like turned and you were like looking at me when a certain song played, and I was just like, it was like
Lovingly, lovingly.
yes, it was a lovingly look. It was not like a judgy look, but I was like hitching a little bit, and I think you felt that with me sitting next to you. It definitely hit me in the feels. So I really appreciated this movie. I won't lie though, it is kind of paint by the numbers. Like, I'll just be honest, it is a biography. Some of the biographies we've gotten in recent years have tried to do some creative things to make biopics a little more interesting, like Rocket Man or Bohemian Rhapsody. We definitely. Oh, Hammy! Oh my goodness, Hammy says, "Would you say you got so emotional, baby?"
So emotional, baby.
I
That's what I
would.
said to Brad. I said, "Why are you
Yep.
getting so emotional, baby?"
Yep. But anyway, I think this is a great film overall that does suffer a little bit from some of the just genericness of it. I think it could have gone deeper on some things, but I think because this film is made at the behest and permission of the family and Whitney's management, we're maybe getting a bit of a biased view. So I'll just leave it at that. Maybe we can go a little deeper in spoilers, but this was absolutely worth a watch for me. How about for you, Jim? What did you think of
Yeah,
this?
I'm with you. Will, I'm a little bit kind of like you went into Puss in Boots, like probably not expecting that much, right? Knowing this is a musical biopic about a very famous singer, very talented singer, actress. Um, I'm like, okay, here we go, another 2.5 hour biopic. And you kind of know what you're going to get. And yeah, we did get a lot of that. This was for me, it was really no Rocket Man. I didn't know a lot about Whitney Houston. I was surprised how much, and we'll get into spoilers and we'll talk about some of that. I was surprised how much I didn't know about Whitney's life. But it's one of those things where right up front you see that it's produced by Clive Davis. It's produced by somebody named Houston. So like you said, Brad, you're taking everything you see kind of with a grain of salt. You're kind of hoping you're getting a true representation of what happened during Whitney's life, and of course the tragedy that robbed us all of her talent. Later in her
Oh,
career. But
spoilers. Sorry.
what?
Oh, well.
No. Well, you had me there. I'm like, wait, did I? No, it's not. Yeah, I think I was pleasantly surprised that I did like this movie as much as I did. I do like a lot of the music, although, you won't catch me. I don't necessarily have a lot of Whitney Houston on my playlists, but I do like some of the music, and I loved. This also highlighted her relationships both with her family, and her professional relationship with like Clive Davis, which I thought was great. The way it was portrayed in this film, Stanley Tucci plays Clive Davis, and I thought he did a great job, representing that character. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it. And again, it's one of those I wouldn't necessarily recommend you have to run out and see in the theaters right now. This will be streaming, I'm sure. This would make a great streaming watch as well. But I did really like this movie way more than I thought I would.
All right. Awesome. Well, Jim, thank you for letting us know what you thought here. Will, how about for you?
I found it dull. I'm sorry, guys. And so I want to start with what I really did like. I think that Naomi Aki, who's the lead here, does an absolutely fantastic job. I think she is very charismatic, and she's absolutely a pleasure to watch. And I think what she does with the movie elevates it beyond what I think would have otherwise been just an absolute slog for me. And part of it's because these types of movies, I mean, you mentioned it before. There's sort of two ways that you can take a biopic. You can hone in on a specific story, a specific emotion, a specific epoch of life, and tell that story, like something creative like Rocket Man, which looked at his story through his own like lens of kind of like legacy / like um, coming to grips with drug use and all of that stuff. Or you can look at something like Jobs, which decided to tell that story over just 3 unveilings, like, and that's the only way they did that story. I think those are creative ways to tell that. There's a certain type of movie, Bohemian Rhapsody was one. I think there's usually 1 or 2 of these every year that comes
There was
out.
the Aretha Franklin one, if you remember.
The
Oh,
Aretha
yeah.
Franklin
Right.
one, a lot of them sort of come across a little bit like just the plot is sort of lifted straight from Wikipedia, right? Like the story is just like, let's skim past all of the highlights, let's hit all the big hits. And to me, that's not a lot of fun to go watch, because you know what you're going to get into going into it. There's no real surprises. There's nothing that really jumps out at you. Not a bad movie. I think everyone puts in good work here, but I think that this movie was sort of, for me, dead on arrival, just because it unless they did something very different than what they intended to do, I think I was always going to have that reaction. The best part about a movie like this, though, is it does remind you, like, hey, like, I should put on some Whitney Houston on the drive home, and
Yep.
or I should go maybe watch some of these like clips that they sort of recreate, go watch those on YouTube afterwards, something like that. Like, that's a lot of fun, So not to, again, this wasn't like a oh man, look, this movie or anything like that. There's actively bad movies that we've watched and reviewed sometimes for the show. This isn't one of them. Sometimes I really struggle with these biopics that don't really go beyond just like the highlights of the life. Give me something more. Put a little more meat on the bones.
Well, and that's totally valid. I think I had the same reaction to, I forget the name of it, the Aretha Franklin movie that you had to this one. Right?
Yeah, I think Respect. Yeah.
That one was kind of a slog for me. Very much paint by the numbers, very dull. But this movie had some elements in it. We'll get into it in spoilers that I thought, like I said, they surprised me. So that drew me in right away to Whitney and her life and how things went, and certain other aspects maybe were glossed over. We'll talk about those a little bit too. And there's probably valid reasons in terms of how this movie came to be for those things to not be super highlighted. But I totally get it. We've seen tons of these musical biopics, especially that we're all kind of measuring. We all kind of have our ranking of these biopics. To me, this one's kind of towards the top. It's not the top, but it's mid to upper tier for me.
Well, I think now is probably a natural point to make that crossover into spoiler territory. I see head nods and thumbs up, so thank you for your consent, fellas. Consent is sexy.
Consent is sexy.
We're going to go ahead and open things up to spoilers. So if you have not yet seen I Want to Dance with Somebody, this is your opportunity to step away. If you're listening live, this is it. No plugs this week because we're kind of plugging 3 movies already. If you're listening live, kind of the same deal. Join us for the next episode, or coming back and listen to this review after you've seen I Want to Dance with Somebody. But spoilers are officially fair game. One thing that I think would be a great place to start, Jim, you started to bring this up, and I'd love to maybe tease more of that out of you. What did this movie do, kind of in comparison to like Aretha, you mentioned that surprised you or helped elevate it for you?
Well, like I said, there were some surprises. One of them, and maybe that's because I just didn't know Whitney or much about her life going in, but I was surprised that she had a same-sex relationship for a long time in her life, and that was a huge source of friction, right? Both professionally and personally for her. And it gave me a lot of empathy for her character right off the bat, being somebody who's, in my life struggled with, coming out and all that stuff, and, how you would deal with it, but not just how you would deal with it, but how would you deal with it if you're in the spotlight all the time, both with your family, your recording company, your manager. I thought that aspect of this movie was really well done. And again, you don't know how much of it, how I'm sure that really happened. I'm surprised that, given who produced the movie, that it wasn't pushed maybe to the background more. You know what I mean? I was like shocked, like, oh wow, they're going there, and they went there right off the bat. From the move from early on, and I thought that was great. I thought the relationship they had was sweet, and it was also kind of heartbreaking to see her have to struggle, not being
Yeah.
able to fully embrace that relationship. In a lot
It's
of her career. Yeah.
it was a surprise to me too, Jim. I did not know that. And so I was doing a little bit of research after the movie, and I guess Robin wrote a book where she talks about this. And Whitney, according to Robin, kind of saw herself as pansexual, not necessarily bi or gay, but
Mhm.
more pan. And you're absolutely right. They had a long-term relationship. There was a physical element to it, according to Robin. And then, Whitney, and we see it in the movie, Whitney makes a decision, like, for her career to, like, date men, and
Push
there's
her
like a
away a little bit.
religious component to this too that kind of came into play. And they end up in this place where they're still really great friends, but like Whitney has Bobby Brown, Robin has a partner at that point. They still love each other, they're still there for each other, but they're not each other's like love per se. And
Yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting relationship to explore. And I think that the movie very easily could have just glossed over that. If you think about 2018's Bohemian Rhapsody, look what they did with Freddie Mercury. Like, we got a
Yeah.
little bit, right? But not enough to really go deep or flesh that out. So I'm actually really happy to see that we got to do that here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if anything, that's one of those elements that for this to have tipped over a little bit more for me, I would have enjoyed even more, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that for me, I when I see a biopic, and chalk it up to taste. I really want to hone in on a key element, a key aspect of the artist's life to learn more about them, as opposed to kind of hearing the highlight stuff. So I think the movie was at its most interesting when it was in doing stuff with either Whitney and Robin or with Whitney and Clive. So I would have
Yes.
liked to have seen just a little bit more of that. I could have, as much as I enjoyed the renditions and the hits and all of that stuff and kind of where her career was going. And I think that stuff was necessary for the story. I would have liked to have seen even more, like, just how she interacted with Robin, more of the friction with Robin, more about when, I think Robin, like I was doing some reading too, play more about when Robin, like, was like fired slash after like an intervention, and just sort of like how that really played into a little bit more. I don't think we saw enough of that to really give me what I needed from it, but I saw enough to be thirsty for it. So yeah. I agree, it was the best part of the movie, and just give me more.
Yeah.
And even the Clive Davis, like, I thought the relationship that they had between Whitney and Clive was really well portrayed in this movie. Like, they had something deeper than just a manager and talent relationship, right? They seem to have a musical kinship and kind of a friendship mentorship aspect to their relationship, which I found really, really well portrayed. Stanley Tucci did a great job. We talked about Robin. Nafessa Williams, I thought, was great as Robin too. And and the revelation about Clive Davis. Now that's probably not a revelation to people in the know, right? It's probably not a revelation to people in the know, but it might have been something that I knew and had forgotten about. But that was also brought out in the movie,
Right.
in a small scene, but still, I say props to the movie for bringing that out. They could. It's another thing they could have totally left out.
Agreed. What did you guys think about the choice to not have Naomi Ackie sing Whitney's hits? She sang a few bars, but I mean, it was 97%, according to Naomi Aki herself, her lip syncing to recordings of Whitney, often used from live performances, so they didn't sound like the radio versions.
Right.
Did you think that worked? What was your feeling?
I think a combination of Naomi Aki's talent, I'm sure she has a ton of musical and singing talent, but also that plus technology today, like you couldn't really tell, like for the untrained eye, you couldn't really tell, like to me anyway, where she was lip syncing, because a lot of the times the versions of the songs they used were not necessarily the radio play
Right.
versions of the songs. They might have been live recorded versions. So that kind of lent itself to, oh, this could really be her singing. And I thought that worked really well. That was a good a choice for them to use kind of different takes or different vocal takes of Whitney singing, but matched up with Naomi's acting. I thought it was really well done, and I don't have an issue with her not singing those. If it looks convincing, like she's singing, then I'm good with that.
Yeah, I mean, she's playing someone who, even in the opening line of the movie, is the voice of the greatest voice of her generation. So, if you're going to have that as your subject, it needs to be as good as the greatest singing voice of a generation. So, no, I'm absolutely fine with them using the lip sync performances. I don't know how good a singer Naomi is externally. She could be one of the best singers in the world. No shade, she would not be Whitney Houston, because no one is Whitney Houston.
Right.
So this was the right decision.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It kind of drives me crazy when people like lip sync to music, especially performers at their own concerts. But in this case, going into the movie, I wasn't surprised that they weren't going to have Naomi try to like recreate, you know what I mean? Like Whitney's voice. I think that's impossible. So I have to give huge props. Naomi is probably the best lip syncer I have ever seen in my whole entire life. I think she did an amazing job at that. So big kudos to her. So good. All right, fellas, any final thoughts on I Want to Dance with Somebody?
Yeah, all I'll say is, like, this movie was even though Whitney was not, I'm not labeling Whitney as gay, but this movie was way gayer than I thought it was going to be. And I'm happy for that.
Yeah. I love a surprisingly gay movie.
Right. A gay surprise. Double gay surprise.
Last thing for me, do you think that this movie went deep enough into the drug struggles, the druggles?
I think
I don't know.
It was really glossed over, I think. Yes, it did show especially late in the movie, right? Obviously, it showed the effects of the drugs on her. But it's almost like they downplayed it. It almost felt to me, and I don't know the facts because I wasn't there. So it felt like they downplayed that. They didn't show, they showed the drugs as like this mysterious guy that would show up and give her a pen once in a while. And that kind of was it. I'm not sure I believe that that's all there was to it.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because I did not know Whitney Houston. I don't know her life.
She never told me
the Wikipedia of it all, right? But like it felt downplayed, right? And so because of that, it felt like, sort of similar to what we talked about with Bohemian Rhapsody, like when you can feel that the filmmakers are having to hold back because there's external pressures because of who's producing the movie and who's involved. And I get it, those people have to sign off, but at the same time, it impacts my enjoyment when I can feel as though there's like something that's maybe not as sincere.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely agree. I think it could have gone deeper, but I think it makes sense from the standpoint of like who's giving permission to make this movie and use Whitney's music, that it maybe didn't go any deeper than it did. My understanding, though, is that there is a really great documentary out there that gives us a much more unbiased look at that. So I forget the name of it. I'll have to look it up again. But Jim, I don't know if you're interested, but that might be something we could check out at some point.
It's very good. It's Whitney, Can I Be?
Ah, okay.
Yeah, from like 5 years ago or something like that.
Gotcha.
It's fairly
Gotcha.
recent. Yeah, it's good.
Awesome.
I was looking at the list of producers on this movie. I swear to God, there's 40 people listed as producers or executive. No, I'm not lying. Like everyone from Naomi Ackie to, Patricia Houston. I don't know who she is. Maybe she's, related in some way. The Clive Davis, of course. There's a Spectre in there. That's a musical name. So there's a lot of folks involved in the production of this. So,
well, I just want to appreciate this movie for making me listen to Whitney on repeat for the last couple days, because I sure have been enjoying that.
I'm going to add some to my playlist.
I will always love those songs.
Without Whitney's music, I have nothing, guys. So anyway. All right. Listen, we talked about a lot on this episode. We reviewed 3 films. It felt really, really great to be back in the saddle again after the holidays, get back into our groove. Just a heads up, though, we are taking next week off. I know we just came back, but Will's traveling for work, and there's some other stuff going on. And so we're going to take next week off, but then we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming. We've got our top 10 films of 2022 episode coming up. Yeah. Excited for that. I know that we've all got a lot of films that we really love. It's one of my favorite episodes that we do every year. Always interesting to see like where we overlap and where we diverge. So I can't wait for that. That's coming up. And then we'll figure it out from there. But thanks everyone for tuning in. We love and appreciate you. Real quick, if anyone wants to chat with us between now and our top 10 films 2022 episode, Jim, where can folks find you online?
I am still on Twitter at JJP Out West. Those are my initials, JJP Out West. So that's where you'll find me on Twitter. And you can also find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right. Thank you so much. Will, how about you?
I mean, yeah, I'm on Instagram at Whatever Cove. You can find me on Facebook. My name is William Lindis there. It's that in real life too, so it makes sense. I'm on Letterboxd, also under William Lindis. Go figure. And I'm on TikTok as at the Movie Bear. So just find me, come say hi.
Rock on. And you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one who likely has Chub Chaser Bear friends in common with you. I'm also on Twitter and Letterboxd at iBradPro. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Happy 2023, and we will see you all soon. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.